This is the Open University.
Franz Kafka, in his diary in 1912, the 21st of August, wrote, "The picture of dissatisfaction presented by a street where everyone is perpetually lifting his feet to escape from the place on which he stands." And imagine me zooming up on a Lime scooter to recite this to you on the banks of the Seine, on a street which used to be chock-a-block with car traffic, that weaponized form of dissatisfaction in which one is always trying to get faster and faster, but actually as one finds is one is getting slower and slower to one's destination. Lime scooters now go faster than car traffic in Paris and many cities where they're employed. Paris is very much a city as a destination and not as a transit zone. It's not the kind of place you're just trying to get through as fast as possible. It's a fundamentally puritanical mindset, isn't it? Max Weber would have described it in the spirit of capitalism and Protestantism and whatever, as the idea that the world is inherently just something you have to get through and not to be enjoyed. Paris, of course, is the home of many types of enjoyment, partly because it's so dense. There are so many people here. It's a bit like an Asian city. And because of that density, people have very small apartments and they go out onto the pavements and terraces of cafes and they watch other people. And this creates a kind of theatrical impression, quite aside from the fact that there was the Comédie Française and the Comédie Italienne. Comédie Italienne in the 18th century would have been where people learned how to be a Pierrot or how to be Columbine or whatever. The stereotypes of... because when you're observing from a café terrace the things happening in front of you, the city life going on in its theatrical way, people wearing particular kinds of clothes, you do tend to, you make snap judgments and you sort of make decisions about what you think people are. But the three types of city navigation which are not automotive, which come from the past of Paris in particular, are Charles Baudelaire's idea of the flaneur, and that was sort of extended in the situationists' idea of the dérive through the city. A flaneur was a kind of sexual loner who was just drifting through the city, following his nose, as it were, trying to find interesting things, places, people, sometimes with a sexual purpose and other times, just shopping. Later in this video, we'll end up in the gardens of the Palais Royal, which looks very grand and noble and aristocratic, but was actually a low-down dive, a place for rendezvous of lots of sort of surreptitious types of, prostitution and things like that went on there. But the third Parisian navigation I think of is Walter Benjamin and the Arcades project. And of course, Paris had many of the early arcades. You can still find them pretty much untouched. Like the Passage des Panoramas. This is like a shopping mall from the 18th century, or earlier, maybe the 17th century, or the arcades of the Palais Royal itself, which later was the home to Jean Cocteau and Colette and people like that. But I'm here really to think about clothes today. Clothes as part of the larger spectacle of a city which works. Which is amusing to be in. I'm being very amused. We're in the middle of what they call the La Rentrée Culturelle, which is the rentrée is just like back to school. This is the time that the kids go back to school. The La Rentrée Culturelle is when the publishers put all their books out, the filmmakers start showing the films they've won prizes at Cannes with. We just have round the corner from here Drive My Car, the Japanese film, which has done very well at Cannes. And there's also things like Paris Design Week, which has just been going on the last week, and the Art Paris Fair, which was happening in the Grand Palais Éphémère, just south of the Eiffel Tower in the Champ de Mars. But when I got here from Berlin a couple of weeks ago, my friends here and my girlfriend here started talking about this place called Relique. Relique is a clothes shop in the 3rd arrondissement. It's The actual address is 25 Rue Notre-Dame de Nazareth, and it's run by someone called Clara Victoria. Clara Victoria is, she must be 25, 26, and she proclaims her fascination with 1970s second-hand clothes. And she says that, isn't it weird that we who are young, who didn't experience the 70s, are fascinated by its style. So this sweater, for instance, is from Relique. I am the kind of relic that was there in the 70s and remembers what it was like when people wore these kind of sweaters the first time around. The weird thing is that we were, after buying this and a couple of other things in Relique, which is curated thrift, so it's a little bit more expensive than the general thrift stores one might encounter, where you buy clothes by weight or whatever. We were in the Galerie Lafayette, which is a big chic department store, and there was a little area which was Relique. They had a little kind of satellite store in the department store, and it had all the same funky 70s coat hangers and furniture and old rotary dial telephones, which Noemi had never seen before, had never touched one of those before. All this technology which I was brought up with, and which was part of the 70s, for better or for worse, was there. And then they had various clothes which you could buy. These trousers, by the way, are from another... This is the kind of thing my dad would have worn, hunting trousers. And nikazubon, as the Japanese would call the shape, because in Japan they were adapted to become like carpenter's trousers. And these are called the whiskers. But I find it ironic that possibly young people in their 20s now are looking back at the 70s through the prism of the 90s when the 70s came back. So I could distinguish three separate phases of 70s style. The original 70s, which obviously happened in the 70s. I was, 12 in 1972, and I remember very clearly all the clothes I had. I had a blue shirt with a rounded collar, and it had stripes down it that had the word love inside the stripes. And then I had this brown sort of, was it brown? No, it was blue as well, I think, a kind of denim jacket with, again, this rounded collar, which was very 1972 as, say, a T-Rex album, which I also had at the time. Or I had a little Cacharel bag, which I kept all my papers and things in, was very proud of this bag, with a Sarah Moon grainy photograph on the cover. So I was really well into the 70s in the 70s. But then they were forgotten. They were in the anxious interval, as I've termed it, for a long time, until the mid-90s. So it just happens that I moved to Paris in the mid-90s in time to experience the first revival of the 70s, which seemed very... there was a frisson of the forbidden about it, because the 70s were the decade that taste forgot for a lot of people, certainly in the 80s, where it was all padded shoulders and kind of neo-Victorian style and a lot of, yuppie, upwardly mobile, glitzy, kind of, or downwardly mobile luxury brands being spread out for the masses to buy into the concepts of oligarchy or whatever. But in about 96, I remember wearing a very similar blue denim suit with a rounded collar, kind of Mao suit, if you like, from a designer called TGV in Paris, here in Pigalle. And, thinking, wow, this 70s thing was all right. I really missed it when it was gone. I missed the colours and the vibrancy and the weird optimism and the bad taste of it. You could play tongue-in-cheek with that bad taste. It was still seen as bad taste, but people were buying into it. And my friends here in Paris were listening to, bands like the Gentle People or the Mike Flowers Pops doing ironic tongue-in-cheek cover versions of Oasis numbers and this kind of thing. There was a kind of deliberate, mawkish, bad taste element to the revival. Now the revival is much more sincere, and I don't think anyone's talking now about the decade that time forgot, or that taste forgot. I think what you see when you go around a department store like the Galerie Lafayette is that you find designers like Anis Bey, who did have their own style in the 80s and the style of the time, although they were reviving maybe post-war French films, new wave French film style or something like that. Now they're kind of doing fake retro, fake thrift clothes. They're doing flowery shirts and kind of pullovers a bit like this, only they're not as good as the actual thrift in the department store. I've never seen that. I've never walked into a department store and seen a thrift area There's now a lot of second-hand clothes on the third floor of Les Galeries Lafayette. I'm not sure if the same thing's happening at Le Bon Marché and Printemps and the other big department stores here in Paris. At least we still have big department stores here in Paris. They're cunning enough and stylish enough to keep up, and they have enough tourists coming through Paris all the time to keep up their balance sheets. But whereas in Edinburgh, my hometown, we've lost Jenner's and Binns and Forsyths. All the big department stores in Princess Street have now closed down, got turned into hotels. So it doesn't really. I think the Selfridge is still just clinging on there, but the Edinburgh people are not really into that, which is fine. I'm not standing for department stores, but it's so the city. The city is trying to faire scène. It's trying to make a scene of itself, and the people within it are making a scene of itself. So I really enjoy that. I really enjoy scooting around and. Today we had lunch at IKEA, which is the cheapest lunch you can have in Paris, and actually rather good, with sort of little salmon sandwiches. And then we went to the Palais Royal, which there's always like a movie being shot there. I don't know, a new episode of Emily in Paris or whatever. Not that I've ever seen that, but and we got coffee there. And I was thinking, sitting outside Café Kitsune. How is this different from being in Café Kitsune in Tokyo or in Seoul or other places where there are branches of this cafe? And in a weird way, they're all linked because some of the same, Koreans would be coming to that cafe here. It's a French cafe actually, which started out as a clothes shop, still is a clothes shop, Kitsune. Means fox in Japanese, Kitsune, but they had a record label as well at one point, like sort of DJ loungy kind of music, a bit like APC, which is run by a guy who has musical ambitions and a lot of musician friends, and he's tried to launch a record label through APC, not very successfully. Kitsune's done better with the coffee than it's done with either its record label or its clothes brand. Clothes brand is it's had some nice preppy tweedy jackets and things in the early stages, and then it got increasingly street. This is something you notice with a lot of these brands. They get increasingly colourless and gravitate towards denim and greys and blacks and whites and blues and things like that. So, I really like that public space in the 21st century has been clawed back by people like Anne Hidalgo, the Paris mayor. A lot of the streets which would have been traffic, would have been cars, have been turned into places where you can walk, jog, cycle, scoot, or simply show off. And what's wrong with that? When you reach the Palais Royal, amazingly enough, at one point, one of the courtyards there, the southernmost courtyard, was a car park. What a 20th century thing to do. You can look at photographs of it in the 80s even. I think there were people parking their cars there. Now it's... occasionally you get a car exhibited. We saw one today being shown off there as if it were a relic of a previous age, another relic. But now the whole place is a pleasure garden, essentially, so with a fountain in the middle where you can kick back and drink your coffee and relax. And there's a Colette inscription on one of the benches there, which I like a lot. It says, faites des bêtises, mais faites-les avec enthousiasme. So do dumb things or naughty things, but do them with enthusiasm. So it's kind of also, it's very much the opposite of the sort of Puritan mentality of the Anglo-Saxon bloc just now, which has very much become a bloc with a new defence pact announced today between Britain, the US and Australia. Where we in Europe are a little bit outside of that. And it was actually Jacques Lang, the culture minister, who transformed this car park into a sculpture park with little columns by Daniel Buren, which didn't impress the American art critic Glenn O'Brien, who said, all you need to know about the French is that they think Daniel Buren is a good artist. I think I think it makes a nice environment, and it's lasted quite a long time. Hidalgo is the Paris mayor, is now launching herself to be the socialist president, potentially, of France. Let's hope she succeeds, because she has I like her approach. And I remember when I lived here before, Kiliwatch on the Rue Tiquetonne was the place to go for second-hand clothes. But I did have a different feeling now. There's more or later thrifting in America. I remember being driven to malls in the middle of nowhere with huge car parks around them, where you'd find the big box stores, and you'd find something called Thrift Village, and it would have oversized American T-shirts, as was the style at the time, and kind of uniforms for people who dug the road and that kind of thing. And so I really got into that, and then later I guess I got into Tokyo, places like Paragram, where you could buy clothes by weight, in Daikanyama, Nakameguro area, and again I guess that was 70s that I was into then, little funny red cardigans with rounded pockets and things like that. But there is always a gravitational tug of greyness and conformity, denim or suits for that matter, and that's goes along with the disappointment about what people like NSB and APC are doing. Issey Miyake even, although he's still using colours a lot, this kind of pleats please thing is looking very tired. I think there's a brand called Sœur as in sister, which I like, or Kitsune, is not bad, but none of them can quite match up to what second-hand. There are pale imitations of 70s thrifting second-hand, so... And the prices are scalpy. You pay 800 euros for a little jacket, or the kind of things I was finding, for 500 yen in Japan could be easily 500 euros to get something similar here from a new shop. I like Dior better. Of the big labels, the big brands, I like Dior better. But Henrik Vipskov from Copenhagen, I like a lot. His last show, it's the only show I watch on video of fashion. Even Prada, Prada really surprised me, because I suddenly discovered this amazing Japanese torch singer called Megumi Satsu, who died in 2010. Her music was used in a Prada show in 2012. It was the Milan Spring Summer Women's Collection for 2013, and her music was so torrid, sort of like electro pop from the 80s. She moved in the late 70s to Japan, and appeared on TV, and so impressed the composer of Jacques Prévert, who wrote Autumn Leaves and all these great classic French pop songs, that he wanted, just before he died, he wanted to write a whole new album of songs for her, or he asked his wife to give him, Megumi Satsu, his unrecorded songs to sing. I don't think it ever came about, but she did work with a lot of famous French people, Frédéric Mitterrand, Jean Baudrillard, the philosopher, and Roland Topor, who is a very interesting, provocative Jewish French writer. And so she made these records with famous French musicians, Serge Paratonner or Patrick Vassori, and a kind of rather frightening figure, but very striking. And I was really struck myself by the low numbers of views she gets on her YouTube videos. Not many people seem to know about her, either in Japan or in France. But she's a very interesting example of cultural fusion. So, tip of the hat to Mucino, Prada, whatever her name is, if it was her who chose this Megumi Satsu music, because it made a very dramatic and dark ambience for this 2012 fashion show. A couple of friends have been in town, Mai Ueda, who I did an exhibition with 15 years ago? No, more than that. 16 years ago in New York, and she's a tea mistress now. She does tea ceremony, and she travels a lot. So she was doing some work with a museum in Belgium, and then came down here for a few days, and now she's in Biarritz surfing, as far as I know. And we also met up with a guy called Cyril Duval, who was a sort of fashion designer. He had his own brand called Item Idem, and now he's living in Taiwan, in a house in the countryside, and it's amazingly cheap in Taiwan. He loves it there, and he's doing surfing as well, because he's living right by the sea, doing surfing in Taiwan. So nice work if you can get it. So international travel is resuming. Paris doesn't feel too strange. You have to show your COVID pass when you go into pretty much anywhere, even if you sit outdoors on a cafe terrace. But at least they're getting on with it. kicked everybody up the pants because vaccination is basically the only way we'll get out of COVID. And so a lot of French young people had been hesitant about getting vaccinated, went out. When Macron said basically we're going to have two classes of citizens, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, a lot of people went out and got vaccinated, including my girlfriend, immediately after that. So we're now going to head off and travel, I think, within Europe again, maybe Italy, some other places. But I really am enjoying the energy of Paris and enjoying the seeing some old friends in the clothes shops.
Open University.